Welcome to the Leadmore podcast. I'm your host, John T. Meyer. Now, the Leadmore podcast is the show where we sit down with the leaders of today to help inspire and create more leaders for tomorrow, because I believe the world needs more leaders. And today, recording this intro here on January 20th, Inauguration Day, I believe in that statement now more than ever. I was so inspired today seeing leadership in so many different forms and factors, from a 20-year-old poet to a 78-year-old president to the first ever female vice president. Leadership matters, and that's why this show exists. So today, in episode 33, I sat down with my good friend Ben Hanten of Yankton. When I think of Yankton, Ben to me is synonymous. He's a community builder. He's an entrepreneur. He started a bar at just 23 years old. Ben has always lived his life doing what he wants to do, chasing his dreams, and not worrying about, what other people think or the path that he should be on. And we talk about that in this episode. Some very unique, compelling experiences he's had in his life. We talk about why he's so invested in the community of Yankton, his big plans for a new, massive 29,000 foot building that'll become the brew station for Ben's brewing company, and much, much more. I really enjoyed catching up with my good friend Ben, and I think you'll enjoy this conversation too. On to the show. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Leadmore podcast, and I'm here with a longtime friend. I know on my 25th birthday, 25th I think, I came down, this person I had just met only on Twitter, and perfect internet connection, becoming a real-time friend, drove down to Yankton to hang out his bar, Ben's bar, of course, Mr. Ben Hanten from Yankton. How are you, Ben?
Good. How's it going, man?
It's going well. It's been a while, and I haven't really talked to you much during this pandemic year. So how's you and your crew, your family, how you holding up?
It's a mixed picture, like for everyone, I imagine. There were, so I own a bar, and my business is in the business of generating crowds. And we had just this, I was so proud. I mean, you can probably look back at some tweets, but I was so proud that we had our calendar just jam-packed for 2020. Like, there were, I think, 4 to 5 days a week for the entire year planned out, with events for in the building, out of the building. It was just going to be this banner giant year.
So you're talking like 200 plus events.
Yeah. And in fact, I remember just tweeting out 150 events scheduled so far, 200 events scheduled so far. And then just comical. I should have done the reverse countdown of 170 events canceled. But it's fine, because we can't complain about things that the whole world is suffering through. And, in a lot of ways, business wise, it's kind of a weird blessing, because we figured out some things that probably were going to be on the back burner. Someday we're going to figure out this website to make it more than what it is today, more than just a placeholder. We're going to have a way for our customers to know what we're up to, and where to find our beer, and how to pre-order beer, and how to pick up at curbside. And it's that was figured out on March 14th.
Wow.
It was we just stayed up all night and did it. And so in some ways, I think there's some benefits. And then we are a brewery too. And so our beer sales are double what they were a year ago. Our bar is not doing great, but our beer is doing great. And the sense, part of the reason why is that there was so much supply chain disruption, and we had beer. And so we were able to get our foot in the door to a lot of accounts that couldn't get beer, because, Miller Brewing shuts down for a couple months. And then when they reopen, their first priority is to say well, we got to take care of Chicago. We got to take care of metro areas. And so there were a lot of keg issues in the area, and we had beer. And so
interesting.
That's helped.
Unpack for, I certainly know, but for a listener, because your timeline and as an entrepreneur, you have both like, it was kind of brewery, then bar for a while, and then brewery again. So kind of unpack what it looks like today in 2020 in terms of the Ben empire.
Yeah, no, it was a bar that started in 2005 when I was 23 years old. I started a beer and wine bar in Yankton, South Dakota. Didn't have a liquor license, didn't have video lottery. First non-smoking bar in the state of South Dakota, and that right there was like, you are an idiot. You are the dumbest individual. And but what it did is it created something different in the marketplace right away. We weren't the pool league place. We weren't the Captain Coke place. And so we had to build a different kind of audience. And what we found is a whole group of people who weren't going out to bars or hadn't for years. And that meant like a happy hour that was full of people who didn't want to change out of their work clothes and didn't want to have to strip down in the garage when they got home because their wife was mad that they stopped for a beer. But it also meant training people that there were, products out there other than Bud Light and Windsor. Yeah. And in 2005, that was a challenge, but it wasn't insurmountable. And people have been along the journey a few times. So yeah, 2007, I started brewing. 2009, I quit brewing. And the reason we quit was a couple. One is, back then finding the resources to build out a brewery properly didn't really exist without a lot of money. We're going to go to Germany. We're going to talk to somebody who can help me find all the brewing equipment and brew house. And so I bought what was available in the area, and there wasn't really that internet support community or Twitter or Facebook to just look it up. You can watch YouTube to just figure out your way. And so as a 25-year-old guy, I was brewing okay beer, but it wasn't maybe at the quality I wanted it to be. 2009, I had this opportunity to buy a liquor license. It was $100,000. And I had to say, I'm either going to pay $100,000 to put into a brewery to do it properly, or I'm going to pay $100,000 to buy this liquor license. And I chose the liquor license, and I killed brewing because I wanted to be like extremely proud of my product, and I wasn't. Yep. That decision to get into liquor brought in a whole new customer base, a lot more profit margin, and it allowed us in a weird way to get back into brewing 8 years later.
Yeah, totally.
So then in 2017, I got back into brewing, and it was 2018. Yeah, 17. And that it came kind of in a weird backwards way. Like, I kind of liken it to if you were a political candidate and you pump up your spouse and you pump up your friends and your customers about like what you're going to do and how you're going to make change. Like that's kind of what we were at when we were building a brewery in 2007. And then to kill it and to say we failed, it hurts for you, but it also hurts for all those people you try to like pump up. So, certainly I wanted to be back into brewing, but I didn't. It was such a task to like get people also geared up for the campaign. And
sure.
So I kind of got backed into that in a different way. Somebody who moved to Yankton, who was a brewer, came into my place every day and was like, gosh, Yankton can sure use a brewery. And
just kept poking and knocking. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he kind of like pushed the issue. And then one day I said, well, if I did something like that, would you brew? Because he was a brewer. And he said, I'd be honored. And, it's like, oh, we should have said something a year and a half ago. But
yeah, because in 07, you certainly were on the early end of the trend nationally and absolutely in South Dakota. 17, obviously, it's blown up in the whole country and craft breweries everywhere. But still, in your own niche marketplace of Yankton, are you still the only one, or is there others now?
One just opened up, and there are two now in this town of 14,000.
Okay. Let's go back to, I want to talk about 05 when you're 23 years old and you start this bar and you have some very like intentional decisions about how you want it to be different. Was that a kind of blue ocean strategy business move? Was that more of a philosophical, like, look, I don't want to hang out in a bar with smoke all day long? Because I think the smoking ban didn't come to South Dakota till 10 or 11, something like
Yeah,
that.
I think that's right.
Crazy to think about. So like, what was driving those decisions at 23 years old?
So I worked at South Dakota Magazine. I was the marketing director there. I was doing photos, and that got me traveling a little bit into the bigger cities in South Dakota, but also just, I had personal time, and I would travel to, went to Europe and a lot of time in Omaha and Minneapolis, and you'd kind of see what the future of bars were looking like there. And then you were seeing what was happening at home. And so some of it's like, not only doesn't this exist in our market, but I can personally name hundreds of people who I don't think are going out because this doesn't exist for them. So, did I do business projections and all that for the bank? Yeah. But did I do a business plan that was super thought out about strategy? No. It was definitely more gut instinct to say, like, I think there's a lot of people who are looking for something different, and I am only going to work in a place that's different. So like,
Yeah.
So I think that like the no smoking thing was like, well, obviously I'd want to work in a bar that was non-smoking, and I'm not against smokers, but I don't want to work in it for every shift all day. And I know my parents aren't going to go to a bar because it's smoky. And so it was much more backing into that from like, this is what I am looking for.
Because I'm sure for as many of those, I think I remember you telling me like you've had like parents of like, maybe after their sports game, they'd stop after their son or daughter's sports game, they'd come and have a beer, or like just these customers who you said like weren't already going out. But on the flip side, I'm sure you also had a lot of sideways looks from folks in Yankton that were like, what is this kid doing? Like, pretty traditional conservative community.
Well, because it was just a no brainer that the people who smoke a lot, drink a lot, and therefore, why are you cutting off, your best customer base? But we also created we've kind of always had answers for something. When I say we, it's me or whatever team we had at the time. But like, so we were talking about this the other day with our staff. It's like, you can't imagine what it was to drink outside in 2006. Like it was such a sin, such a terrible idea. Like, people need to drink indoors. Like, are you crazy? And well, again, we took kind of a non-conventional approach to that. Like, we knew that we wanted to have a patio and we wanted to have outdoor seating, not only for those smokers, but also for just like quality of life. And going to the city, like in 2005, when I asked for a beer license, just beer, no liquor, there were a couple people who voted against it, right? And that wouldn't happen today unless you had bad character issues. But like, they just philosophically like, alcohol is bad. There's too much. There's, well, that was that way with patios, right? And so I knew going to the commission was going to be like, no, you can't do that. And so I tore off the front of my building and moved. So my building was already licensed.
Oh yeah, you have that kind of setback patio.
Yeah. So we moved inside of a place that was already licensed and just tore out the wall rather than going out onto the sidewalk. And so like, they couldn't really say no. And so then all of a sudden we had patio culture. And, it's just weird to think, like, when we started in business too, there was a big fight. Like, somebody wanted to pull my license because we were serving wine to people on a Sunday, and you can't do that. It's like, that wasn't that long ago, but now it just seems crazy that now we're like, we should have more patios and downtown seating.
Yeah. And I think where I'm trying to get maybe with my line of questioning, I know this is a leadership podcast, is I've always admired your willingness to sort of define your own territory and turf and never put yourself in a box. And I feel like you've always chosen your decisions on your terms, not what you're supposed to do. And so whether that be as a teenager working in an alt newspaper, starting a brewery at 23, deciding to get in like tech angel investing, teaching yourself things on YouTube. Like you just seem to be very like independent minded and don't really care what people think. And so I think that's a good leadership. I mean, a leader, you have to care what people think, but like, you're not afraid. And so what do you think drives those decisions? Is that just a philosophical part of you, or is there,
It's
Yeah.
probably some like undiagnosed mental illness. It's probably a personality flaw for sure. But yeah, I mean, I definitely do care what people think, and but you're right. I've made many decisions despite maybe some people's feelings, and I think it's a lot of times just that old entrepreneurial adage of like throwing your head over the fence and then figuring out how to get it back. It's like some of it's just a personal challenge, and there are real stakes involved now at 39 and with kids. You got to be a little bit more deliberate. But even today, I'm doing some things that are probably like crazy and like you shouldn't be doing this, and what a risk. But it's what gets me up. It's what keeps me up late at night and gets me up early in the morning, is to just try to get away from the mundane of doing the same thing every day. And I think that the people who can do the same thing every day are heroes too. And we need them in organizations. It's just not really what I'm good at,
Because maybe let's do one more on this, because I know you have some awesome stories. You grew up in Webster. I know you moved out to Fort Collins. I think, if I remember correctly, you dropped out of college to take a job. You did some politics. So like, what's one of maybe the craziest stories where like your mom or dad called you and were like, Ben, what are you doing?
There've been a few of those. I started, I guess a crazy thing is like, I had the top scholarship at Augustana. There was the Regent Scholarship competition they had where you got to, your grades are part of it, your ACT is part of it, your essay, and they chose their top 4, and I got one of those. And like, a year later, I was like, outsies, I'm moving to Fort Collins. I'm going to start a free newspaper in a state I've never lived in. And, I think they didn't quite understand that and thought that was crazy, that I had education pretty much figured out from financial standpoint and at a good school. And I was opting for you could be broke in a year, and I was also right. They were right. That was the result. I lost money and had to fail, and so I think that was when I was packing up my Chevy Lumina full of stuff to head out of state. I think they were like, "Oh my gosh, she is crazy."
So here's the leadership question there. Then what do failures or crazy challenges or successes or failures, what do they teach you when you have those new experiences?
Oh, I think everything. I mean, like the Fort Collins thing where I started a newspaper and folded, so many lessons about like how to hire and how to effectively manage your time, and how you showing up in a place and setting an agenda isn't enough. Like the community didn't know me and didn't care about me. And there was so much other noise or options in the marketplace that me just showing up and saying I'm here is not enough. And I thought it was, and, not having enough runway, and maybe, I could just keep going down that list of what that taught me. And I only know it because I saw my credit card bills and I saw my checking account go to zero, and I had to come back to South Dakota with my tail between my legs and start again. Like, I think failure was the lesson there, and
but also like the stakes,
done
like
that many
said,
times. It's like,
Sure. It doesn't seem, at the same time you were what, 21 or,
no, I was 19. Yeah.
19. Okay. So single and no kids and no mortgage and all those things. But like, I don't feel like that's
Lumina was paid for. Chevy Lumina was all paid for.
Stakes haven't really scared you either, because we'll get to sort of like your new challenge. But before, you mentioned community and sort of the lack of connections or network that you had in Colorado. I want to talk about that with Yankton, because Yankton's not like your hometown either. But to me, or like folks online or people in South Dakota, to me, you are very synonymous with Yankton and vice versa. So obviously you're in the space of gathering people. So it's probably, like you said, events are good for business, but also I know for you, it's more than dollars and cents. You're also about building the community. So talk about how you focused on trying to change the culture of Yankton over the last decade.
Yeah, I think maybe there's a theme that I just think that a town like this can really get stuck into negativity of we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we've got brain drain issues, all those kind of things. And I think that we've rebranded that and changed that attitude, and that's kind of opened up a lot of possibilities. So, I mean, that starts with starting a wine and craft beer bar in 2005 is like, what are you doing? This is a cheap beer town. This is a whiskey water town. And to say, well, we are that, and we're also this,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've tried to do that in a lot of things. We started, like you said, an angel fund in Yankton, South Dakota. We've held startup weekends in Yankton. We've held, big 1 million cups gatherings. We've done a lot of the things that you might expect in bigger communities. And, those have also been, I used to be a part of some music festivals and stuff where we generated 20,000 people at one event. And it's saying, like, just because this place on the map says our name is this and our population is this doesn't mean that that's who we have to be. So yeah, I think it's connecting with people who also see possibilities and who realize that they're here because of a choice, not because
Yeah.
they like, I have to be here,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
owning that choice.
Yeah, because I would certainly give you the label of, I guess we call it like community organizer in today's world. But you've done a lot of things. I feel like you have your time horizon for those type of things is like, is what driving you is just, I want to live in the community that I call home. I want it to be more like this, or are you trying like, is there an ambition or is there a goal here, or why do you decide to invest so much time and money in Yankton?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of it is that when I started the bar and the bar kind of took off, I knew that I was going to be married to this town forever, and
Mm-hmm.
meaning that I can't do that work remotely. I can't, like your teams can be in Croatia. We can't. We're a bar,
Yeah.
and so I knew that we were going to live here, and that my selling the business wasn't really the calculation. I wanted to run it. And so then I think it's like, well, then let's make the town a little cooler. Let's make the downtown a little cooler. Let's encourage some people to stay or some people to move back. And so some of it's just selfish that like, I want to live in a cooler town and want a cooler
Mm-hmm.
downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of it's that other side of it, like, let's prove that we can do something. Let's prove something audacious or crazy. And, the downside of that, is that the momentum can shift. Meaning like, yeah, we had some huge technology events and we had some pretty big impact in the startup world, but like, there's no real evidence of it today. Like
Sure.
it's kind of gone,
Yeah.
but I don't think that it's gone from the minds of the people who were involved in it. And I think we've all taken those things back to our jobs. And, John Meyer, friend up in Sioux Falls, hosts a podcast. He,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you said to me like once that we've talked about this community leader thing. And you said the best thing I can do for my community is to run a great company. And, I've certainly remembered that and have tried to take some of that back and say like community leader or downtown developer or any of those projects we've been involved in were really cool and important. But like now I got to focus on building a business and I got to take some of those ideas that were floating in the air and like run with them and like build the best company I can. And that's good for me, my family, and the community too,
Yep. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Cause you're right. I mean, with that community organizing, you're putting these little seeds in the ground that you might have an awesome event that people remember, but it seems like the impact, we're talking about decades long returns that you're planting an oak tree. And although the immediacy might not feel like it's there, but I still think those are investments that you made in people and place and that you'll still reap those benefits down the road, I guess.
Yeah, one challenge too, and you've been there on the journey with some of my business stuff, but like we used to go to these tech conferences like Big Omaha and stuff, and I always felt like I had the imposter syndrome of being in the room, because it's like, oh, so you run a bar. What else are you doing? What else do you want to
Sure.
do? Like, everybody kind of, in a weird way, kind of looked down their nose of like, oh, so what are you doing here? And I felt that, and I was always trying to recreate something too, to like somewhat fit in. And then at one point I just was like, oh, actually, this is what I do, and this is what
Yeah.
I want to do. And so kind of getting a little bit more comfort level with what I'm good at, which I think is marketing and finding communities of people,
Yeah. And
didn't
do you
matter what
think,
the product was.
yeah, I'm curious, since we're kind of in this, close in age, we both have two daughter or girl dads, young kids. And you're right. We were like in those same events, same rooms, kind of
Yeah.
coming up together. What do you think? Was it age? Was it maturity? Was it just what got you to the point where you're just okay with that? Like, you're like, no, this is who I am. I'm good at it. I'm going to keep doing that.
Well, some of it's too just that some of the people who go to those things never get out of going to those things. And then you start to just reflect on that and wonder why. It's like, is this the product right here? Is this the thing? And so I think I was looking for, like, much like college or anything else, like, I'm ready to start, I'm ready to go. And I went to those events and networking events to get inspiration and ideas and to connect with people. But I've got it now. Like, I'm ready to go. Well, I think it's also just looking at the ledger sometimes and being like, oh, I have thousands of customers, and I have a system, and I have employees. Why aren't I working to make that better? Why am I trying to blow it up to create something new?
Yeah. The grass is always greener type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I think combo of kids certainly help kind of reset that ledger. And then I think COVID too. Like, I find that of all the sad outcomes of COVID, one of the good ones was like FOMO just sort of disappeared. This idea of like missing out on something or an event that you can't go to, or like, am I moving fast enough, big enough? You're just like, no, I'm just doing my thing, and everybody's doing their thing in this whole world right now.
Yeah, that's right. Although fire festival, I would like to get to a fire festival at some point.
Let's transition into, when we talk about community building, we talk about the bar. I guess I kind of think of this as like Ben's Brewing 3.0, if you consider like the '05 wine bar, and then the element of the brewery coming back. And now tell us about this pretty massive project you just embarked on, which really combines your background as owning a bar as well as your passion for building the community of Yankton. So tell us about the project.
So I'm in the Freeman Company building, which we now call Ben's Brew Station, and it's so Edgar Freeman built this building and completed it right after World War II. He built it as a factory for building parts for defense and aviation, and this was an important employer in Yankton, and still is. They still exist. They just eventually outgrew the space, and they are now out at Applied Engineering under the same ownership umbrella. And so this building, my wife works for Freeman Company, so I've been in here many times, and it's this weird building. You drive by it and you see all this glass block and big brick, and I think the first time I ever saw this building, you saw these weird lights coming on through the glass block, and you drive by it and you're like, oh, that must be like where the county snowplows are, city maintenance shop or something, because it just looks like an old municipal.
Is it a warehouse? Is it manufacturing? I guess.
Right. Nobody knew. But what really would happen inside was lathes and milling machines and things to swage tubes, things that were made to make parts for aviation. So customers are SpaceX and Bell Helicopter and Boeing. They do things that are, very low tolerances and ultra precision. And then there's also that element of like the materials need to be traceable because they're used in sensitive areas. So it's an important industry. But when they moved here, I think everybody moved from here, I think everybody assumed this building was just going to be another dinosaur building. That was
And when was that? When did they leave?
Well, they realistically started moving out about a year ago. Okay. So not super long. They started moving some teams over last year, January, February, and then they really were gone by March. And it's just a behemoth. I mean, it's 29,000 square feet. It's 2.5 acres. And, my brew space downtown is a little smaller than this.
A little dungeon, yeah.
It's huge. And, but it's got loading docks. It's got more electrical than we could ever dream of. It's got office areas, freight elevators. It's got, it's got all of the recipes of doing away with excuses for like why we can't do growth or expansion, because we brewed in a basement downtown and you physically were limited by ceilings and walls and square footage, and here we have more than you could dream of.
So you officially bought the building when?
Closed on it November 2nd.
Okay. And unpack sort of, your decision making throughout 2020. When this building goes open in March, then the pandemic happens. And how did you convince yourself, what I should do right now is buy a 29,000 square foot building?
Wasn't a direct line, that's for sure. So I've been struggling with the idea of growth for a while, because you just kind of go back and forth between like, I don't know, is it really right to step up brewing? But then we were hitting purchase orders where we weren't able to keep up routinely. And I feel like people think that's cute once or twice, but they don't think it's cute for long, and they move on.
Oh, yeah.
And so I started looking around for land, and I ended up buying some land in town. I bought like basically an acre, and I was going to build a new building. But, budget wise, what I would have put up is a steel building that would have been 5,000 to 6,000 square feet that would have cost $250,000 to $300,000 plus the land to build out, and it would have been a place to brew, but it wouldn't have been anything more special than that. It would have been, it would have been on the outskirts of town. It would have had very little space for you to grab a beer, and you wouldn't want to because you're
no
on the
history.
Edge of town.
Yep.
No history, steel building, no windows. And so, but I bought that, and that was the plan to go that way. And then I just drove by here a million times and just started staring. I mean, I kept looking at places downtown, and there was nothing downtown built that had concrete floors, that had enough ceiling space, that could deal with forklifts. But I kept driving by here.
Physical limitation or requirements of a brewery for sure.
Yeah. And so then I called the boss in New York, and they own like 7 of these places, and I just lowballed them an offer and said, like, I don't want to insult you, but if you're looking for a quick close, I'm that guy. And he said, well, no, we're not gonna. That is an insulting offer, but we found a number that worked for both. And I can tell you that if you told me I was going to do this in March when we were shutting down, I'd say you're absolutely nuts. And even probably in July, I was pretty iffy on it, but by September, I was like, okay, this is going in this space, this is going in that space, and kind of off to the races.
I love it. And when I saw it, like, didn't surprise me because I know who you are and I know how you think, but like, hopefully if anybody listening to this, unpacking, quitting, dropping out of school, starting a brewery or a bar at 23, like hopefully people understand what motivates you, what drives your decision-making, and understands like you got some big vision. So tell us about what this looks like when it's safe and I can come and hang out, and tell us about the vision for this space. So
Ben's Brewing Company is owned by one person. So that means that the financing comes from cash flow and bank loans. And so it means that I don't get all of the toys right away, and means that everything has to happen in phases. And so phase 1 is me trying to focus on brewing and not looking at everything else in the building. Because you walk out of this office and you'll see a piece of carpet coming up, and my instinct is like, rip up the carpet, let's do it, and I need to stop, because when you've got 29,000 square feet, the cash register dinging just keeps happening. And so I focused on brewing, and we spent a lot of money to make the brewing right and proper, and also to be ready for growth. And we're cranking out beer. Like, that was the whole reason we started looking for land,
it's the cash cow.
So focus on it. And so this morning we've got 30 kegs heading out the door, and we've got another batch of beer being brewed in the morning, and our tanks are full. And so that plan is working. But then the next phases are like where it gets just like decision overload. And so where I think it goes in 5 years is that there's, a canning line in here, but there's also, I hate to use the word restaurants because it's not my background. I have no interest in it, but I have the space for it. So like, for instance, if you think of like what Looks Market is in Sioux Falls, where there could be multiple concepts under one roof. But there's certainly a tap room. There's, a bar. There's a large patio, like almost a full acre of patio. There's a lot of parking. We think that this could be a tourist destination for Yankton. It's 5 blocks from downtown. It's 1 block off the major road. It looks cool. It's special, it's unique. And I don't think it was special to anybody because they weren't invited to be in the space, but like, we're just showing lots of photos and videos, and also can't wait to get people in for tours and tastings when it's time. But,
cool.
It could be a multi-million-dollar project, and that's not going to happen overnight. Right. And so right now it's phase 1 is we're brewing.
Yeah, that's great. So all those things you've done in the past, like, event, you could bring events there, you could do the patio, you could do tours, like, food concepts. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah. What's does that change plans at all for downtown, or you'd still have both locations? And
no, and again, I think this is where people are still doing the "you're crazy, this guy's an idiot" thing, and they might be right, but like, my idea is that downtown and what this is are different. Like, we are a bar. If you came into Ben's Brewing downtown right now, you wouldn't think it looked like other breweries, because it doesn't. We have every sports package. We have, 20 beers on tap. We have liquor. We have church groups that meet there. It's different. It's the neighborhood bar. And I don't think that changes. I think the people who work across the street at the bank, or the merchants downtown that come over for beers after work, like, I think their idea of coming to this brew station and having this brew experience, like, that doesn't matter to them. They would do that when their kids come to town, but they just want a place to grab a drink after work. And we want to cultivate that and not change that. Those people paid for why we're here today. But this space, I think, is where people from Sioux Falls say, like, there's a couple breweries down in Yankton. We should go down to that.
Let's get there.
Brew station. They're doing an outdoor music festival today, or there's the a disc golf tournament outside, or whatever. Like, we can do those weird big things that we can't downtown.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cornhole tournament, indoors, outdoors, whatever.
What's
more of a destination?
The footprint of the two now. So you got like serving staff at downtown. You got brew staff out here. How many employees now, and kind of how many do you think the team could get to?
I think on payroll right now we have 17 people. And of those, the full-timers, there's probably 6 and a lot of part-timers. But this building right now is a full-time brewer, myself, and 2 part-time brewers. The other building is a general manager and bartenders and servers and janitors. I think when we get to here, if we start playing out all those other elements, like bar and restaurants or whatever, and again, don't say restaurants, because that's just like, we're not in that business, but we have the room to do those crazy ideas. I mean, the architect has plans for possible bowling lanes, and there's, it's just crazy stuff.
And you could do
there's
pop-ups, you could do experiment.
Right.
Yeah, you could do a lot of things. Yeah.
But anyway, when we get to that point, the staff is north of 2025 for sure,
Yeah. And I don't think we'll have time to get into that today, but if anybody is in the food or beverage industry, I think when we talk about the topic of leadership, we've had conversations about employees, about culture, about, motivating teams. I think you've had a lot of success in an industry that's probably typically harder to get people to show up on time and do their shifts and get paid, relatively lower wages. But I know you've been a great leader in that space too. One of the questions I think the last question I want to end with, and then we'll do some rapid fire. So you mentioned, you're 39. And so you started a bar at 23. So 16 years in your resume. I know you're not looking for a job, but if we had to print out your resume, it'd be full of a lot of unique experiences. Let's go 16 years forward, because I admire your vision. I know you think this way. So you're 55, and I think your daughters are probably just about leaving high school or just starting to leave high school. What is
maybe
your
already quit college,
just like their dad?
Yeah.
What's your hope for your community and for Yankton in 16 years?
Well, I can already see it starting to happen here. It's the tourist destination thing is happening. I mean, we've felt the impact of the tourists the last couple of years, and I think more and more people are discovering this is a really special place. And I think while manufacturing is going to have its ups and downs, and I think other industries like banking and healthcare will be solid here, I think the one thing that puts Yankton on the map that's really special is it looks like an old town, and it's got lakes and rivers and unique architecture. It's cool. And when you're stuck in your commute in Sioux Falls and all these other places, and you realize you can get around this town in like 2 minutes and see some really cool stuff and have a river run by your downtown. I mean, I think it's special, and I think that more and more people are realizing it's special. And so I think the tourism element of our town just continues to grow and blow up. And I hope we're still a part of that,
I love that. Well, I love that in my eyes, you're one of those people that is so synonymous with your town. So if I ever have anybody traveling through, and they're like, what do you do in Yankton? I'm like, okay, here's Ben's number, call Ben, he'll take care of you. And so that's awesome. Cool. Let's finish with a little bit, just to learn a little bit more about you. If people are curious, a little rapid fire here. I don't know if you're a big reader or not, but what's a book you've either read recently that made an impact, or a book that you maybe recommend, give to people often?
So probably the biggest changing book that I've had in the last year is the 4 Disciplines of Execution, 40X. Not sure if you're familiar with that, but essentially it's about getting, there'd be a lot of ways to organize a team, but one of them is to say all the people need to work on the most important thing and stop getting caught up in the whirlwind, because I actually have tagged tasks as the whirlwind, the things that are just that fill up your day. They need to be done, but they don't move the needle. And so the 4 Disciplines of Execution is essentially what is that one wildly important goal that we can work on as a team to really move the needle? And then it also really reorients your mindset on is that a lead indicator or a lag indicator? So you might say, well, my sales are going to hit $1 million. Well, that's a lag indicator. What are the lead indicators that would indicate if you're on the right path to doing those type of things?
Yep.
That's really been an impactful book.
Nice. I haven't heard of that one. I'll check it out. I've been asking leaders how they have unplugged or de-stressed in the last, we're heading now almost to a year in this pandemic. So how do you do that?
Oh, well, craft beer is good, but Buddy's even better.
There he is.
This is my new corgi, and we have a kitten and we have a puppy in the pandemic, and I know it's cliche, but we did it. And the kids,
I know I do put this up on YouTube, but a lot of folks listen to the audio. So if you can't see Buddy, just give us a quick descriptor of this little guy. He's adorable.
My description: he's the most adorable. He was born October 10th, so 3 months old, and he's very short. He's red and white, and got ears that stick right up and not much of a tail at all. And he's just a big dog attitude in a small package. So
I love it. I'll just send this to my business partner, Amy. Corgi's always been like her dream dog, so she'll freak out.
And and Buddy's pretty tired right now, so I better let him go back under the desk.
Your parent, I like to hear from leaders as I'm trying to do better myself. What's a piece of parenting advice you would give to somebody?
Ooh, a piece of parenting advice. I don't know if we're following the rules. I mean, I think that we're doing some things that are unconventional. Like right now, I feel like we're friends with our kids, and I don't know that that's how my parents did things. And my kids probably get more things than I got when I was a kid, and I don't know if that's true of everyone. But I'd say that the biggest thing for me is just like spending time and letting them talk. And it's just, I feel like it's how they can unravel the world around them. They describe things. They really want to describe how things work and why things are ordered the way they are. And so letting them unpack that seems to like help the journey a lot. And it's just pure entertainment too.
Yeah. So curious. I love that. All right. So the next one, we asked this question when we hire at Lemonly is, what is your superpower? The one thing you do better than anyone else. Brag about yourself.
Yeah. I don't know, but it seems like I'm pretty decent in a group setting, thinking on the fly. So like you come up with an idea of brainstorming sessions essentially. So like if there's a problem, the problem for me is I can come up with 50 different ideas or solutions to a problem. And so focus can be an issue, but like generating ideas is not a problem. So generating ideas, I guess I'm probably better at.
That's good. Yeah. In that phase, there are no bad ideas when you're first starting out. So all solutions. And then I don't know this question, the answer for you, but who would be the leaders or mentors that have really shaped your life, whether you've known them or you've studied them? Who are your kind of leaders?
Yeah. I mean, certainly my dad's a big one because I worked with my dad from the age of 6. I was an employee for my dad until I left high school at 18. And so certainly got to see how he interacts with the public and how he built his business. And, he's still somebody that we have those conversations with weekly about, so that's a big one. But then in like the completely opposite direction would be somebody like Lawrence Diggs. You'd know him as the Vinegar Man out of Roslyn, South Dakota. And, Lawrence came from San Francisco, picked a place on the map, least like his background and ended up in Roslyn. And that's how he does everything, is like how to look at things a completely different way. And, Webster, small town, 2,000 people where I grew up in, but he was in Roslyn, 11 miles away, and that's much smaller. And he was having groups organizing that town and coming up with ideas for that town and generating many, many business ideas from that town. And so he certainly had a huge impact on how I view people and the community that I live in.
That's awesome. He sounds like a good future guest on this show.
Oh, he would be the most interesting guest on this show. That's awesome. Absolutely fantastic. But be prepared for your mind to go. So anytime you need a little inspiration, you call up Lawrence.
All right. I love it. Well, Ben, this is fun. It's good to catch up too. This is such a good excuse of this show is to catch up with good friends. And so proud of everything, all these big moves you've made in the last 12 months. And I can't wait till this pandemic is done. I can come down and share a beer. I guess the last like rapid fire I wanted to ask you, maybe this is like asking you to pick which of your 2 girls is your favorite, but what's your favorite beer that Ben's Brewing Company makes?
The first beer, Westside Park IPA, is the first beer we brewed. We've brewed 67 batches of it. It's my go-to. to. It's 24% of all of our sales. It's outside of the building. It's our biggest thing. There was a time last summer where it outpaced Lagunitas IPA on all draft accounts in South Dakota, which are not all of South Dakota, but Eastern South Dakota. Some of that might have been to do with supply chain disruptions, but Westside Park's our star.
I love it. I have that when it's at Bread and Circus downtown in Sioux Falls, so I always grab that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks.
Congratulations on selling your company.
Thank you. Yeah, first episode since that happened. So.
Yeah. So if the most important thing you can do for your community is to build a business, now what? You going to go back to building community?
Got to do it again. Got to start over.
Do it again.
Yeah. And figure out how to, what are the lessons you learned from last time, and how do you do it differently?
Life was getting too comfortable and predictable for you, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think I get inspired by the people who, like yourself, who aren't afraid of, it's like, I could have done this job the rest of my life. But ready for that next chapter. Don't know what it is yet, and I get a little time to figure that out. But I'm sure when I have some ideas, I'll run them past your radar. Yeah.
Well, cheers to you.
Thanks, buddy. Well, great to have you, Ben. And we'll, I guess, lastly, if anybody wants to, obviously they can come down and stop by the brewery but how will they get a hold of you if anybody has a crazy idea that should be in the future brew station?
Well, all the social media, I'm either at, I guess Twitter, I'm at Ben Hanten, BenHanten. But I'm on all of them in some capacity. And Ben's Brewing is all of the handles for all of the other social medias.
Cool. Perfect. Thanks, Ben. You take care.
Cheers to you.
All right, everyone. That was episode 33 with Ben Hanten. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. And reminder, just quickly, we have new episodes of the Leadmore podcast every single Thursday. We drop them every Thursday. We're on to episode 34 next week. And you can listen to these episodes wherever you listen to podcasts, right? Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever. Download them or just go to leadmorepodcast.com and you can stream them right there. I'm your host, John T. Meyer. The world needs more leaders. Now, let's go out and lead.